back, get back, get back.
A little girl dies suddenly in a small Texas community. Her family fears she was murdered. They search for answers, but find only more suspicion. With no direct evidence and no witnesses coming forward, the family teams up with a detective and a prosecutor to unbury the truth behind the terrible loss of a child. In this episode, some names have been changed. The mysterious death of a 2-year-old girl devastates her family and baffles investigators, who begin to suspect murder. Fighting to uncover the truth is prosecutor Jeri Yenne.
It was incomprehensible to me. This was planned, executed murder, premeditated, of a little human being. As a prosecutor, I need to make sure that that individual is brought to justice and that they stand before a jury and face what they've done.
Alvin, Texas is a quiet oil and farming community of 20,000, located south of Houston near the Gulf of Mexico. At 9:20 a.m. on January 23, 1994, a call came into the Alvin Police Department's 911 center. The caller reported that a baby had stopped breathing.
Attention Alvin EMS, need medical and crew.
The dispatcher sent an emergency medical squad immediately. The rescue team knew that when responding to a child in trouble, time is especially important. A minute can mean the difference between life and death.
The baby's not breathing. Right here in the living room. Come on in.
They entered the house at 9:25 a.m.
What's wrong, sir? Sir, what's wrong?
The child's father, Shane Goode, was reluctant to let her out of his arms.
Give me the baby. Let me see the baby. Let me have the baby.
Also responding to the emergency call was Senior Patrol Officer Terry Earl.
Walked in the house and immediately observed a man holding onto a child. I could see the top of the child's head and one foot protruding from the blanket that had a gray sock on it. The child did not appear to be moving, making any noises.
And that's why you're going to...
Shane laid his little girl down so the EMTs could check her vital signs.
That's...
When the child was laid down, I could see that rigor mortis had already set in to the lower extremities of her body.
She's gone.
2-year-old Renee Goode was dead.
Michelle.
Renee's half-sister Michelle, who had spent the night with her cousins on a sleepover, called her mother, Annette Campisi.
I received a phone call in the morning from Michelle telling me that Renee was not breathing and the paramedics were working on her. She said the paramedics said that she's gone. And I said, Michelle, I'm on my way. I'm coming right now. And hung up the phone and drove.
20 minutes later, Annette arrived. The investigating officer learned the baby's parents were divorced.
What happened to her? What's going on?
Renee was on a custody visit with her father, Shane.
Baby, give her to me.
The patrolman tried to calm the frantic mother and escorted her outside. As with all child deaths, a detective on call arrived at the scene.
My baby was fine. There was nothing wrong with her. She was fine.
The police officer told him the baby had died, but that EMS personnel could not readily determine a cause of death. the detective learned the residence belonged to Renee's grandfather. The girl was motionless when he awoke.
Yes.
The detective hoped the child's father, Shane Goode, could give him some idea as to what had caused Renee's death.
Dad, can you take the girls? Yeah. Come on, girls.
Their grandfather took the girls out of the room.
Let's see. Yeah.
The detective asked Goode what happened that morning.
Came down here. She said something's wrong.
Goode said that around 9 o'clock, his
Daddy,
daughter Kelly
Daddy,
woke him
wake
up.
Quick. It's Renee. She won't wake up. Come quick. Renee, wake up. Renee isn't breathing. She can't have a baby.
The baby was cold to the touch.
Call 911. Now! Call 911! Oh, she's not breathing! Does Renee have any medical
The detective asked when Goode last saw Renee alive. The father said he picked Renee and Michelle up the night before at Annette's. He brought them to his father's house, where he also lived, for a sleepover.
And now, live from Burbank.
Renee and her sister Michelle were excited about sleeping over with Kelly, Shane's daughter by a previous marriage, and her cousin Sarah.
Hey, give me that back!
Goode said the girls had a fun night together. Around midnight, he told them it was time to go to sleep.
But you don't play. Put your sister in bed and turn off the TV.
Having trouble holding on to your money.
Okay, baby?
He stayed with the girls while they settled down, then went to bed at around 12:30. Goode said Renee seemed fine when she went to sleep.
Okay, Mr. Goode.
He didn't hear
Thanks,
anything
I know this is
unusual all night
difficult for you.
and had no idea what could have
That'll do it for
happened.
now. If you can think of anything else.
Renee Goode's body was sent to the medical examiner's office. State law requires an autopsy whenever a child under 6 years old dies. It was difficult for the grieving family, but they hoped an examination would reveal the cause of death. Results of toxicology tests could take several weeks.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh
2 days after her death, Renee Goode was buried.
He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me.
The family asked Shane not to come to the burial because tensions between him and Annette were so strong. They were desperate to know how Renee had died and why. Not long after the burial, police received a preliminary medical report. It suggested Renee might have died of pneumonia. They gave the news to their family contact, Renee's grandmother, Sharon Couch.
I knew that she didn't die of pneumonia. And I said, how can it be pneumonia when she wasn't ill?
Something had caused Renee's death, and the family was determined to know what it was.
If the medical examiner's office didn't know, and if the police department didn't know, someone, somewhere, would have the answer, and I was going to find the answer.
Couch followed up with the Alvin police. She and the family believed foul play might be involved in Renee's death. She told the case detective that Shane and Annette were married in November 1987. It was a second marriage for both, and troubled from early on. Within a year, the couple separated. When he learned Annette was pregnant after the separation, Shane denied the baby was his.
Look, I want to have this child.
He wasn't going to have anything to do with the pregnancy or the child. Annette's response was that she was going to have the baby.
When Renee was born, Shane demanded a paternity test. It confirmed he was the father.
She looks like her mother did when she was little.
Renee's death devastated her family.
She was brought into
When I try to describe Renee to people, I just don't think there's really any words that are just adequate to describe her, because I just can't convey what type of child she was, because she was so animated. She never walked. She would skip, she would jump, she would hop, she would dance.
The family believed Shane Goode had something to do with Renee's death. They insisted that the police keep investigating.
There was just going berserk.
The detective went to the district attorney's office. He explained the case and the family's suspicions to Assistant District Attorney Jeri Yenne.
The mother was convinced that the father had killed the child, and the father was acting in a way that just didn't seem quite right.
The prosecutor asked if there was any life insurance on Renee.
Yet on insurance policies, but I'll look further.
Investigators had not found any.
I don't know why I asked that, because normally when somebody kills a child, it's usually in a fit of rage, anger, and they didn't really mean to do that. We've never had a case where somebody would want to monetarily profit from a child's deth. But I was looking for any conceivable explanation for a parent to want to kill a child.
I will check on the...
The prosecutor suggested Shane Goode be brought in for a polygraph test.
Get back to me right away on that, okay? All right, thank you, Detective, very much.
Hey, guys.
When police called him, Goode agreed to come in and take the test.
I talked to him a while ago, and he said he's on his way. So...
Detectives were eager to see the results,
Yeah, he's
but Goode missed the appointment. Eventually, Goode called to cancel, explaining that he was having car trouble.
Yeah, we're waiting for you. Where you at?
The detective rescheduled twice more. Each time, Goode failed to show. 3 months after the mysterious death of her granddaughter, Sharon Couch received the final autopsy results, hoping they would answer the family's questions.
When we finally got a copy of the autopsy report, the medical examiner and the law enforcement agency, they were telling us, well, it was undetermined.
Renee's mother also read the report.
I was so angry and upset that I thought, I cannot believe they actually put undetermined on here.
Couch refused to accept the medical examiner's conclusion.
I just wanted the answer of why she died. That was all I was interested in. I contacted every doctor that wrote a report in any of the medical journals regarding some of the things that we'd found on the autopsy report.
The family also kept in contact with the police, asking them for updates. But the investigation grew cold. Then, several weeks later, the family received a phone call that started the case moving forward. They spoke with Stacy Andrews, who had lived with Shane Goode after he and Annette divorced.
way before, he would always just,
She felt that Shane had done something to Renee. And it was real important for her to get in touch with Annette, because I guess she wanted to talk about their experiences with Shane. And at that time, I don't think she was aware that we were thinking the same thing.
Andrews explained her suspicions.
because of the child support.
She said Shane had a good relationship with Kelly, his older daughter by previous marriage, but avoided the subject of Renee. He always referred to her as Annette's child.
How's that?
According to Andrews, he never even wanted Annette to have the baby.
So did you find out anything about the paternity test?
No.
When she asked Shane if he checked on the results of the paternity test, he became upset, getting angry at any mention of Renee.
Bring it up. Don't start with me.
One time was
She said he did not like having to pay child support, and said he would demand visitation rights just to make Annette mad.
Did she never mention it?
Then, She said an insurance agent left a message on their answering machine.
I don't know.
Shane had taken out a secret life insurance policy on the little girl. Andrews considered this unusual, since Shane often complained about money problems. She called the agent to try to get more information.
Hi, I'd like to speak to somebody about some life insurance.
She pretended that she wanted life insurance on her kids and just took a chance and said, I want the same kind of policy that Shane has on his children. What kind was that?
The agent checked his records.
And Renee.
She did find out that Shane had taken out a life insurance policy on Renee, and it was for $50,000. You know, a child that he didn't even come for his visitation. We kind of thought that was, you know, pretty suspicious.
But it was perfectly legal. The family still felt they could do nothing. They were unaware that they had a new advocate in the Alvin Police Department. Detective Sue Dietrich had developed a personal interest in the investigation. She asked permission to work on the cold case.
It caught my attention because it was a child and that there were some suspicious circumstances. And I too had a child that died when he was 17 months old, and I had to agree to an autopsy, which was not something I wanted to do, but I did because I wanted to know why my child died.
An autopsy revealed Dietrich's own child had died of a rare viral infection. She understood that Renee's family needed an answer too. The family hoped that with Dietrich's help, they would finally discover the truth. The little girl had been buried, but to those who loved her, she had not been put to rest.
Give me the baby. Come on. Give me the baby.
In January 1994, 2-year-old Renee Goode died mysteriously while on a custody visit with her father, Shane. The results of her autopsy were inconclusive. No cause of death was determined. The investigation stalled. Months later, Alvin, Texas police detective Sue Dietrich reopened the cold case.
Yes, she did.
She met with Renee's grandmother, Sharon Couch, who told her the investigation into Renee's death had been disappointing.
And I don't really think that they thought that anything else was going to be done. But I just wanted to start from square one with them, and we did. And Sharon had done such a wonderful job of documenting everything.
Couch briefed the detective about Renee's good health and the undetermined cause of death.
Okay, so
She also told her about a $50,000 insurance policy that Shane Goode took out on his daughter months before her death.
You know, in a homicide investigation, most detectives know that you look at who has the most to gain by that person's death. And
$50,000 could be a motive, but by itself, it did not prove homicide. Sharon Couch put Dietrich in touch with Dr. William Anderson, a pediatric forensic pathologist in Florida.
He wanted a copy of the autopsy report, and he reviewed that, called and said that he wanted tissue samples, slides of Renee, and that he would review that, and that he would call me back and let me know whether he thought that he could help.
The Harris County Medical Examiner's Office shipped the autopsy slides to Dr. Anderson in Florida. The slides contained samples of tissue from Renee's heart, lungs, and other vital organs. Dr. Anderson saw no signs of pneumonia or any other disease in the samples. At the time of her death, Renee was a healthy child. Because she was healthy, the doctor was concerned with two abnormalities. The original autopsy showed an enlargement of the small veins of the lung tissue and some swelling in the brain.
That would indicate that the child didn't just suddenly die in an instant, like, for instance, a cardiac arrhythmia, something going wrong with the heart beating. That something actually occurred that took a little bit of time for this child to die. Now, there's just a couple of things that are pretty...
He suspected Renee did not die of natural causes.
There's a great deal of dilatation in the vessels.
Dr. Anderson called prosecutor Jeri Yenne to say he needed more information to determine the cause of Renee's death. He suggested they exhume the body so he could perform a second autopsy.
And who is
Because Renee had been buried for 8 months, he advised the prosecutor to move quickly.
Dr. Anderson indicated to me that time was of the essence because there is decomposition in a dead body and that you lose the quality of tissues when you want to examine them.
Yenne acted immediately, but was careful to protect the evidence.
I was able to obtain a court order authorizing the removal of Renee Goode's body from a cemetery. And we picked a particular weekend so that law enforcement was capable of being arranged so that security measures might be taken.
Yenne asked Detective Dietrich to arrange continuous custody for the body.
So that no one would be able to say that the body had been altered or tampered with in any way.
The body had to be treated as evidence from a potential crime scene. Any mishandling of it could make the results of a second autopsy inadmissible in court.
Everything was videotaped, and they put the casket in the ambulance. The ambulance was escorted back to Alvin by police escort. The body was taken to the hospital and stayed in a room that was guarded by police officers who stood guard by the door all night long. And then the next day, Dr. Anderson performed the autopsy.
The detective observed the 5-hour examination. It was a difficult task for Dietrich.
I think the thing that I remember the most about it was that she had pink ribbons in her hair. And she was very close in size to my child that had passed away. So, yeah, it was extremely difficult. But I knew that she was going to be able to tell us what happened to her.
The examination began with the doctor studying the outside of the body for bruises or abrasions. He found nothing remarkable. During an internal examination of the body, Dr. Anderson noted several things had not been done at the initial autopsy.
Number one, the spinal cord had not been removed and the back had not been looked at. The diaphragms, which separate the abdominal cavity from the thoracic cavity, the muscle themselves had not been removed. So basically, I conducted that portion of the autopsy.
Examining the soft tissue and muscle of the back and the area underneath the diaphragm, the doctor found signs of internal bleeding.
This was not just settling of blood. This clearly was blood in the soft tissues. And when that happens, we know there has to be circulation because something has to push the blood into the soft tissues. This indeed was hemorrhage, and it had occurred while the child was alive.
The location of the bleeding, near the belly, indicated force had been applied to that area.
The type of force could be inflicted, for instance, using two arms together in a scissor-like manner. Something that would interfere with that child's ability to breathe. That would fit with the findings of the congestion that we saw in the organs. So putting that together, I felt that this was consistent, very consistent, of a compressional asphyxia.
The doctor believed someone compressed Renee's abdomen until she suffocated. It was murder. Renee Goode's body gave them the answers they needed. Now her family and the police were determined to find the person responsible. In Alvin, Texas, 2-year-old Renee Goode died while visiting her father.
Call 911. Now, call
Her
911.
family suspected foul play.
She's not breathing.
10 months later, her body was exhumed. A second autopsy revealed she had not died of natural causes. Detective Sue Dietrich called Renee's mother, Annette Campisi, to say the family had been right.
When Sue told us that she had been murdered, I thought, finally, this is it. It finally has happened. And it took us almost a year. It was about 10 months. I thought, I can't believe this day is finally here.
Some of the witness statements, I think you have some.
The new information gave prosecutor Jeri Yenne and her team something tangible to work with.
Yes.
The information from the second autopsy affected the investigation in probably a critical fashion because we had a homicide determination.
She was looking at a murder case. Shane Goode was her prime suspect. The prosecutor assembled her team to decide how best to handle the investigation from this point.
Alone with this child. And then we're going to have to work on motive.
Before arresting Goode for the murder, they had to determine how to win a case based entirely on circumstantial evidence.
So anybody who has any other thoughts in addition to... We knew that there was a life insurance policy on Renee in the amount of $50,000, but during our investigation, Shane Goode had not made an official claim for the proceeds of that life insurance policy, which I thought was unusual. I wanted Shane Goode put at ease that this investigation was going to be closed, that it was over. So I wanted Sue Dietrich to go and tell him that she was closing the investigation, and could she please have an interview with him just to make sure she had covered all bases. And one of the things I had asked Sue to address with Shane Goode was, who was the last person to see Renee Goode alive? Because I realized as a prosecutor that the last person to see her alive was basically the person that killed her.
Right there's fine.
Dietrich said she had a few questions to tie up loose ends on the case.
We spoke briefly, and then I told him that I needed to get a statement from him. He said that his handwriting was not very good, and he asked me if I would write a statement for him. He would dictate it to me, and then he would read it, and then he would sign it if he agreed with everything in the statement, which is what occurred.
The prosecutor hoped Goode would tell the detective something that could later be used against him in court.
Renee was fine.
I wanted her to lock him in that he was the last person to see his daughter alive, and he very willingly did that. I also wanted Sue to cover with Shane Goode that Renee was a healthy child, that when she came to him that evening, that she was healthy and that there was no reason for her death.
You'll also sign underneath.
When he was finished with his statement, Goode read and signed the document, agreeing to its content. He still hadn't mentioned the life insurance, but as the detective was about to leave, Goode asked a provocative question.
He asked me if the medical examiner's office was still conducting tests, and I told him no. He asked me when I thought he might be hearing from the insurance company, and I told him that I felt like he'd be hearing from someone pretty quickly.
Go over some evidence concerns.
Dietrich gave Shane's signed statement to Jeri Yenne. That, along with the insurance motive and Dr. Anderson's autopsy report, convinced the prosecutor she was ready to go to the grand jury.
From Florida?
Yes.
On December 7, 1994, Yenne presented the case to a Brazoria County grand jury. Shane Goode's parents were called to testify. The grand jury proceeding got everyone's story on the record. Usually, a grand jury does not rule immediately, but this time, they issued an indictment that morning.
They want you to leave the courtroom with the indictment in your...
With the warrant, the detective went to arrest Shane Goode. There was no answer at his home. Dietrich was worried he might have fled. But then the suspect and his father pulled up. Dietrich placed Goode under arrest.
There was no reaction whatsoever. He didn't say, "What do you mean? I didn't kill anybody." Nothing. He just turned around and put his hands behind his back. So we cuffed him and took him to the Alvin jail.
No.
Because prosecutors believed he killed his daughter for financial gain, they charged Goode with capital murder.
All right, I'll bring the pretrial motions.
Houston attorney Skip Cornelius was hired to defend Goode against a particularly difficult charge.
Develop some theories.
The allegation is that there was an injury, in this case a murder, to a child. Human beings are so protective of children that that allegation all by itself, unsupported by any evidence, just the naked allegation, is almost impossible to overcome. It evokes such rage and resentment and bias and prejudice in the heart of human beings, just the thought that somebody could kill a child. Getting beyond that initial prejudice is the biggest hurdle that I faced in this case.
Ron,
The prosecution faced their own challenges.
and Jeri, you're coordinating our witnesses.
Their case was entirely circumstantial. The state had no eyewitnesses and no murder weapon.
I'm missing on a timeline.
They decided
Would
not
all
to
of you
seek
look
the
through
death
files
penalty.
before you, the notes, the witness statement? I believed that if I sought the death penalty, that I would actually put the jury in the position of acquitting him. I would make the stakes so high that it would backfire.
As the trial approached, the prosecutors hoped they would be able to secure a conviction against a man they believed killed his own daughter. In Alvin, Texas, Shane Goode was on trial for the murder of his 2-year-old daughter, Renee. The trial began on August 7, 1995.
Your opening statement.
The Brazoria County prosecutor told the jury about the Goodes' failed marriage, Shane's alleged lack of interest in Renee, and the $50,000 life insurance policy. She said that the state would prove Shane Goode was the last person to see his daughter alive, and that he was a murderer.
Never ask about the child.
Defense attorney Skip Cornelius explained that there was no evidence to prove Goode had done anything wrong. He reminded the jury the defendant was presumed innocent.
We are presenting our side.
The facts in this case were extremely weak. It's very difficult to prove you did not do something. My job was to highlight the non-existence of their evidence.
Truth shall help you.
I do.
Please be seated.
Prosecutor Jeri Yenne chose to begin her case by calling Senior Patrol Officer Terry Earl.
I was able to give the jury some sense of what the scene was like initially by someone who came right upon it and by an officer who had no downside. Every single defense question, he could look at him and say, "I'm simply here to tell you what I saw that day."
At the residence, I was met by the victim's grandfather. He told me that the child needed...
Officer Earl told the court that when he arrived, the emergency team was on the scene,
There was 2 paramedics.
but had been unable to get the father to release Renee to them.
And my observation was when I first got there, his weeping noises or attempt to cry weren't genuine.
The officer testified that it seemed to him that the defendant was pretending to be distraught. Goode's lawyer contended the officer was not qualified to make that judgment.
I took offense to Terry Earl's testimony that he concluded that the defendant's actions weren't genuine. That's his opinion. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. Neither is Terry Earl.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth.
The state called Renee's mother, Annette Campisi, to the stand. She testified that Shane was behind in child support and did not show interest in his daughter.
1993, Renee. It was 1 month before
The prosecutor introduced into evidence a video taken at Christmas 1993, 1 month before Renee's death.
So be it. We'll label this item 1.
The defense had tried to have the tape disallowed, arguing it was prejudicial, but the judge allowed 4 minutes of it to be played. On the tape, the jury saw a happy, healthy child performing for the camera. It was a difficult moment for everyone. Hoping to establish that Shane Goode hid important information from his ex-wife, the prosecutor played a taped telephone conversation between Annette and Shane that Annette made after Renee's death.
When we spoke.
Your Honor, I would like to enter this for the record and play it for the jury.
Okay, we'll label this item 2.
Yeah, I got something at work.
When Annette asked about insurance, Goode denied having any significant coverage on Renee.
I'm not really sure.
Did you have any kind of life insurance or anything?
I got like some thing at work, I think it's 2,000 or something like that.
Why did
The
you
prosecutor asked Annette why she made the recording.
Because I felt that there was something wrong with the circumstances of Renee's death.
It was difficult for the defense attorney to cross-examine the little girl's mother,
Your witness.
but he needed to point out that suspicion between divorced parents does not prove guilt.
She made her position clear to the jury that she thought Shane was guilty, but she had no evidence to back it up.
To give the jury a complete picture of the night in question, the state called others who were in the house that night, including Shane's niece, Sarah.
After Renee had died, what did you
After reviewing her pretrial statement, the prosecutor asked the girl what she thought happened to her cousin.
She looked at the jury and said, "I'm afraid that he might have actually killed her," meaning the defendant.
The defense attorney did not hear the comment and asked for it to be repeated.
And she said, I think he might have actually killed her." And that made the jury almost stand up in their chairs.
Goode's lawyer established the girl did not see her uncle do anything unusual the night of Renee's death. He asserted the prosecution was merely pointing to people's feelings and impressions. To bring in more facts, the state next called forensic pathologist Dr. William Anderson. The details of his findings were the cornerstone of the state's case.
Dr. Anderson's testimony was very critical, telling the jury that with the additional procedure done on the second autopsy, that the cause of death for Renee Goode was compressive asphyxiation, that it was not accidental, and that someone intentionally killed this child.
Using a life-size doll, the prosecutor asked the doctor to show the jury how he believed Renee was killed.
Applying pressure directly would cause bruising, damage to the spleen, increased.
Every eye in the courtroom was focused on Dr. Anderson.
One of the possible mechanisms we looked at, a scissor-type grip, and then a squeezing and a compressing and holding that for a period of time, several minutes, which would then account for the compressional asphyxia and would also then explain some of the findings I'd indicated had taken some time to actually transpire.
The doctor testified he had no doubt Renee's death was a homicide.
I would say yes, you have a homicide.
No further questions. Thank you.
To refute the expert witness's credibility, the defense pointed out that the state paid for the doctor's services.
Is that correct?
Yes.
I really did not think that a jury in Brazoria County would be very persuaded by that kind of testimony.
They hoped the jury would put more faith in the original autopsy report, which left Renee's cause of death undetermined. After the doctor, the state called a final witness.
I'm going to hand you what has been marked as state.
Detective Sue Dietrich took the stand. The prosecutor asked the detective to review her investigation.
She also testified to her taking a statement, and we introduced Shane Goode's statement through her.
Write out a statement.
The detective told the court the defendant would not write out his own statement.
It's okay if I can.
He asked her to do it.
Handwriting's horrible.
After going over the statement for the jury, the prosecutor passed the witness.
It is pivotal to your theory, is it?
Their theory was that everybody had to have been asleep, because part of our defense was, how could this have happened without people knowing it? Renee was asleep less than a foot from her sister, Michelle. How could somebody have killed her during the night without these girls waking up?
But since it is crucial to your theory...
Goode's lawyer argued the dictated statement had been altered.
On the statement that was introduced into evidence is the phrase, everyone else was asleep.
The attorney pointed out the letters were squeezed in over the signature.
Is it possible that it happened anyway?
In his original police statement, Goode said Renee's sister Michelle was awake when he went to bed.
The statement that was introduced into evidence out here on the margin has, I think Michelle was still not awake, and I got up and went to bed. The word not has been added in there. I mean, nobody even, that's not even intelligible to say Michelle was still not awake. It doesn't even make sense.
When was the final sentence?
By suggesting the statement had been altered, Goode's lawyer had delivered a serious blow to the state's case. After the detective's testimony, the state rested and the jury left for a recess. Calling for a bench conference, the defense made a motion to dismiss the charges. Now was their best chance of gaining an acquittal. They hoped to convince the judge there was insufficient evidence to continue, to take the decision-making away from the jury in such an emotional case.
You never know what a jury's going to do. And the tendency where a child is the victim is somebody's got to pay.
If the judge agreed that not enough evidence had been presented by the state, he could dismiss the case, and Shane Goode would walk out of the courtroom a free man. When the prosecution rested in the murder trial of Shane Goode, the defense made a motion to dismiss the case due to insufficient evidence.
Do you wish to be heard?
I think we have met our
The judge
burden,
considered the argument, but denied the motion.
We'll deny it. Let's bring the jury back in.
The jury would decide if the defendant would go free. Defense attorney Skip Cornelius was undaunted.
I still thought we were going to win. I just had this enormous hurdle to get over because it was a child victim.
Goode's lawyer began by calling his own expert, the former chief medical examiner of Dallas. He had reviewed the original autopsy report and analyzed the victim's tissue samples.
He agreed that a cause of death could not be determined. And he had done thousands of autopsies and said that there are some situations where you cannot tell the cause of death.
The prosecutor wanted to convince the jury that the medical examiner had not thoroughly looked into the death.
Police investigation.
She pointed out he hadn't studied birth records, pediatrician reports, and other items that might factor in Renee's health.
I've only examined the stuff.
She hoped the jury would disregard his testimony as uninformed.
No further questions.
The defense then called their most important witness, Renee's father, Shane Goode.
I needed to have him on the witness stand, have the jury meet him and get his explanation for these things. And frankly, I thought he made a very good witness.
Is that correct?
Yes. When asked about Renee's life insurance, Goode explained he had purchased it to use as her savings. She could cash it in when she turned 18. He never told Annette about it because he did not trust her after the divorce.
Annette was obviously hostile to me. She had hostile feelings towards me.
He said he hadn't seen Renee for the first year because he was awaiting the paternity test, then the finalization of court-ordered visitation rights.
Basically trying to keep me away from her and the child.
Referring to his dictated statement, Goode denied saying that everyone was asleep when he went to bed. Goode had countered each of the state's circumstantial claims.
How the marriage went? How did it go? What was it like?
But prosecutor Jeri Yenne noted the father's lack of emotion while he testified.
Get along real good.
She hoped the jury did too.
He could not muster any emotion. I believe that everybody on that jury, they expected, I think, to see somebody who was upset that their daughter was dead. They didn't see that.
In her cross, the prosecutor returned to the morning of January 23rd, 1994.
Get back, get back.
Goode admitted he never asked the girls what happened to Renee or made any effort to resuscitate her. The state asserted this was because he already knew she was dead.
Where is she? What's going on?
The prosecutor also reviewed the statement Goode gave Detective Sue Dietrich. In it, he claimed he was the last person to see Renee alive.
Now, how does he know that? How does anybody know that you're the last person to see somebody alive, really, under those circumstances? I also said, so if it's a homicide, I looked at the defendant and asked him, if this is a homicide, you're the only one who could have done it, right? And he answered, yeah, if it's a homicide, sure am. I would have never expected that response.
After 6 days of testimony, the case went to the jury. They deliberated 3 hours before reaching a decision.
Please rise. We, the jury, find the defendant, Michael Shane Goode, guilty of capital murder as charged.
Goode was sentenced to life in prison.
Shane Goode never had 1 ounce of love for that child. She wasn't even a human being to him, and that bothers me. That bothers me. She was a liability. She was a financial liability.
Take the prisoner to
Skip
jail.
Cornelius believed his client had strong grounds for an appeal.
Frankly, I never thought, and don't think to this day, that they were sufficient legally to support a conviction. I still, at that point, had very high hopes for the appeal on the issue of insufficient evidence.
But 4.5 years after Renee's death, Goode confessed in a letter to Annette. By his own hand, Renee's father had negated all hope of a successful appeal.
I was initially surprised at Shane Goode's letter from the penitentiary because, in my mind, it was at a time when he was still pending appeal. So even if his case was reversed on appeal, we could use the letter.
For Renee's mother, Annette Campisi, the letter only confirmed what she already knew.
I just thought, finally, everybody has seen him for what he is. Everybody knows the truth now. Renee has her justice.